Now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is on his fifth visit to West Asia since the October 7th Hamas attacks.
It was just hours ago that the top American diplomat met Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Blinken's latest visit to West Asia is aimed at achieving another truce in the 4-month-long Israel-Hamas war. Now, the visit comes right ahead of a threatened Israeli assault on Rafah, the border city, which is currently holding over half of Gaza's population.
Now, Blinken's meeting with Saudi Crown Prince, that lasted about 2 hours. The U.S. State Department says that the two leaders discussed regional coordination to achieve an enduring end to the crisis.
The ceasefire proposal reportedly envisions a truce of at least 40 days, when Hamas would free civilians among remaining hostages that they are holding, followed by later phases to hand over soldiers and the bodies of the deceased hostages as well.
Now, the ceasefire offer delivered to Hamas last week by Qatari and Egyptian mediators awaits a reply from the militant group. Hamas says it wants more guarantees that this truce will bring an end to the war. A senior U.S. official says the ball is in Hamas's court now, adding that it is impossible to say if a breakthrough will be achieved.
Blinken's latest West Asia tour is aimed at winning support for another U.S. proposal. The second proposal is aimed at rebuilding and running Gaza post the war, and ultimately for a Palestinian state.
On ground zero, Israel, it has threatened a new ground assault on Rafah. That's the small city at southern border with Egypt. It hosts over 1 million internally displaced people of the narrow strip.
Israeli tanks have been advancing for 2 weeks in Khan Yunis. Fighting has also resurged in Gaza City in the north of the strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israeli forces had killed or wounded more than half of Hamas fighting forces and would carry on until total victory.
Now, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas's Gaza chief Yahya Sinwar was moving from hideout to hideout and is no longer leading the group's military actions.
Hamas-run authorities in Gaza say more than 27,000 Palestinians have been killed in the war so far. Israel says 226 of its soldiers have been killed in its offensive. The Israeli military assault on Gaza was launched after 1,200 people were killed in Israel on the attack, which was launched by Hamas on the 7th of October, and more than 250 hostages were captured in a surprise attack.
Now, to discuss this further, we are joined live by Glenn Carl, who is a former national intelligence officer from the CIA, also national security and foreign policy expert. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA, sir.
Thank you.
Now, sir, Israel is preparing for a military action in Rafah, where most of the displaced Gazans are currently sheltering. Palestinians in the region have high hopes of a possible ceasefire as well. That happens to be the aim, of course, of Antony Blinken's visit. Do you feel a ceasefire will be achieved post this visit?
Well, I'm not a betting person, and I would hesitate to place a bet on that, certainly. That's the objective. I actually think the larger objective, the priority for Secretary Blinken in the visit is the larger peace agreement that would give some positive consequence to the horrors that we've all been observing for months. And the ceasefire would be a part of that. The ceasefire is important, but I think that seeking a comprehensive peace, dreamlike as it may sound after all these years, is the top objective.
Mr. Carl, I also wanted to get your thoughts on this. Now, a ceasefire offer was made to Hamas last week, which they have not yet responded to or replied to. I wanted to understand, do you feel Blinken will be able to push for mediation talks with Hamas, given that Israel is still firm on its stand of not stopping until Hamas is destroyed?
Well, the U.S. doesn't really have any particular leverage on Hamas. It has little, to be blunt about it, with Israel, actually. It can offer inducements to both parties, and I think a greater inducement, ultimately, really, to Hamas. and the Palestinians than to the Israelis, which is the prospect of a comprehensive peace. Most Israelis have desired that for many years too, but the Israeli government of Benjamin Netanyahu and the far right that has really been the power broker and control power in Israel for years opposes that. So little leverage of the U.S. on Hamas, and I agree with the characterization. It is really now it being whether to accept the ceasefire is the decision of Hamas and in their court, as it were.
All right, sir. Also, something that I wanted more clarity on, perhaps you could help us there. Now, another aim of this visit is the normalization of Saudi-Israel ties as well. Now, how do you see that happening? U.S. State officials, they have reiterated that the peace will remain elusive unless there is a two-state solution. How do you see things playing out on that front?
Well, I think your characterization is exactly right, and that's always been the case. And I think one of the fundamental causes of the fighting, of the attack by Hamas on October 7, was Hamas's, in particular, and Iran's objective of destabilizing and stopping the movement among Saudi Arabia, Israel, and brokered by the United States for a comprehensive peace. That would push Iran's influence back a good deal, and it frankly offers the prospect of a historic shift for the good in the Middle East. So the October 7 attack was intended, I think, first to stop that. They haven't succeeded, the Hamas attack and Iran, in stopping the drive for an agreement, to my surprise and great pleasure, but they have delayed it. So it has always remained a wisp, hard to grasp. And there are three conditions, and that is that Benjamin Netanyahu's government be replaced by one representing the majority of the Israelis that accepts a two-state solution. Two, that Hamas be removed from control of Gaza and power, if not completely destroyed, which I think is hard to do. And three, that there be an international effort to help stand up financially in particular, and with security protections, whatever Palestinian entity or country could follow on. Those things are tall orders, but that's what I think Blinken is attempting to accomplish.
Right, that was Mr. Glenn Carl, former National Intelligence Officer from the CIA, joining us live on World DNA right from Boston. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights, sir.
My pleasure.